What's up, everybody? Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. We hope you're doing good. Mike, how you doing, buddy?
I'm hanging in there, man. I'm living life. I'm mostly breathing. Not too much to complain about.
There is a lot of excitement going on in the UFO world, but we're gonna stick away from that 100%. Well, maybe do we do the UFO news segment?
Let's open with UFOs, or should let's just open because the shit's too fucking wacky not to talk about. So Mexico has fucking aliens now, guys. I'm sure you guys already know this because that was reported a few days ago, but aliens, they presented the bodies to Congress, and they're here and they're real, and they don't at all look like paper mache things that some kid made in art class. Not at all.
Now I didn't get to watch the presentation. I saw a bunch of pictures. I browsed through it until they showed the aliens. Now I don't know if you know, but I know that everybody made a bunch of memes and talked shit about how Americans don't care how their government just announced that there's aliens. The government, again, I got to say this, the government did not announce that there's aliens. There was no admission from our government. This is the words of a whistleblower. Is this some journalist, whistleblower dude presenting these bodies, or did the government themselves present these bodies?
So the journalist is presenting them to Congress, to Mexican Congress.
Okay, so in this case, again, the Mexican government is not admitting anything. This is something that's being presented to them.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. From what I understand in our Discord, they were talking about it a lot, and they're saying the person who's presenting it has presented fake alien bodies before.
Yeah. He's kind of like a sensationalist journalist. He's how do I put it?
He's Mexico's George Knapp.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. So he's kind of sensationalist. He's like, but yeah, I don't know if it's when he's presented this fake evidence before, if he was duped or if he was intentionally committing fraud. I don't know. But I mean, look at these fucking aliens, dude. I told Mateo earlier this week that I'm pretty sure I could make a pretty decent copy of those things. So that's something I'm going to be working on. And once I do, I'll put pictures in the Discord for our Patreon followers, and I'll have Mateo post something on the main Patreon page as well. But it's something I'm working on. I'm doing Halloween stuff at the moment as well, so I'll probably just kind of lump it in with there as I'm working on that stuff. Do a little work on that since I'll have all my equipment out anyway. But they're fucking, like, honestly, I've seen aliens in movies from the 80s that look better than that.
Yeah, even with them saying that they're mummified.
Yeah, even that's just a nice way or a easy way for them to get away with just making a fucking paper mache dummy and slapping a little. It looks like the fucking alien meme on E.T.'s body. Like, the A, that meme, like on fucking on E.T.'s body. That's what it is.
Yeah, my brother's mom had a lot of like Aztec, Incan, Native American pottery and art around her house. So I grew up looking at a lot of that stuff, and I have to point out the similarities. Like, to me, it's the same thing. It looks like Peruvian art, maybe Inca art, sculptures. They're saying that they've tested these things, right? And they're aliens.
So they, I don't know if they've said they've done DNA testing. They've done X-rays on it, and they showed pictures of the X-rays. And there's some experts that are claiming that what they're showing is an actual skeleton, but it's more like a Frankenstein skeleton, where they just took bones from different animals and kind of put them together underneath whatever this thing is. like whatever they did to make the skin or whatever. So one expert I saw said that it looked like part of the spine was upside down, like the way the vertebrae were. It looked like it was turned upside down and kind of attached to some chicken bones or something, like that Russian alien that was made of bread and chicken bones and shit. But yeah, I don't know. To me, this is very, very much phony thing, but it got a lot of news just because UFOs are cool now.
I wonder if these people presenting these corpses, I mean, I'm not going to say they're real, or I think they're fake, but I wonder if they would suffer the same penalties as they do in this country for lying to Congress. I mean...
Yeah, I don't know.
That Grish guy, Grosh, whatever, he's making the rounds all over the place too, and they're starting to try to discredit the guy. And I watched some filmmaker talk about it, and he was saying that we better get ready. He says that he has some shit. He says you guys don't understand his clearance level, his position, and he has high definition video and photo that he's seen of UFOs, alien bodies, and he thinks he's the shit still. I mean, he apparently did this interview on YouTube where he just told all. Did you get to watch that at all?
No, I did not.
No, I'll find it in our Discord and post it in the show notes. But I don't know. He just seems like he's on coke now. He has his eyes as open as wide as he can. But again, even that director, that filmmaker said he's facing prison if he's lying, and he said keep that in mind for what's to come, for what he's gonna release next. He's saying that he'll take people to where they recovered bodies now.
Oh shit!
Yeah, so
that's awesome.
He's doubling down.
Yeah, he's gonna show us everything. That's what I want. I want to see it all, Mateo. And they better not look like paper mache dummies.
Were you at all disappointed when besides the fact that they look like they're made out of...
Mateo, I live in a constant state of disappointment.
But besides the fact that they look like they're made out of Crayola stone clay, were you like, come on, aliens aren't 3 inches tall, motherfucker?
No, size doesn't matter when it comes to extraterrestrial beings. In fact, I would prefer them to be like 2 feet tall and skinny with stupid fucking faces. That would be ideal. I don't want them to be tall mantis creatures or baby eating reptiles or creepy, soulless, black-eyed, big-headed gray aliens. I don't want any of that shit. I want really stupid-looking 2 foot tall aliens that I could stomp to death, no problem.
I want it to be like Mars Attacks, but way different.
Yeah, like they roll up thinking they're awesome because, like, through some fluke, they're the giants on their planet, and they're like, oh, we're gonna fuck these guys up. They get there and they're 2 feet tall, and we just fucking kick them.
Oh, that would be so awesome.
Yeah, that's the way that alien invasion goes. Fuck those guys.
Let us know, guys. I'll do like a poll on YouTube or some shit. Let us know if you buy those supposed bodies from the Mexico UAP hearing as being real. Because to me, it just looks like 1,000 other fakes, right?
Yeah. The second I saw them, I'm like, there's nothing about that makes me think that this is real. Not a goddamn thing.
They said they're supposed to be like 1,000 years old.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. Or they were made in fucking some kid's art class last summer.
That guy who's presenting him, the journalist, if it is who I think it is, he's been on tons of American shows about UFOs and yeah. He's legit. I
think he's even been on Ancient Aliens as well. Not that that's a barometer for legitimacy, but I'm just saying.
But I think he's legit. He's been at this forever. I think it's weird for him to make these claims. I mean, I hope they're real for this guy's sake, but apparently he has no problem with presenting fake alien bodies if he's done it in the past.
It's like that dude that keeps presenting different fake Bigfoots.
Yeah.
I know that I was bullshitting you guys last time, but this time I've actually got the real Bigfoot. Okay. All right. You got me this time. But next time, it's going to be real. Watch. spoiler alert, it's never going to be real. Bigfoot doesn't want you to know about him.
We talked about that recently. It's just so weird when people just fake stuff to where it's just going to be called out instantly, and they just don't care. They do it anyway. I mean, do you get that feeling with this and these bodies, or is it just an attention grab?
I don't want to besmirch his potentially good name, but I can never pronounce his last name. I know his first name is Jaime, and it starts with an M. I can't pronounce it though. But he, I don't know if he's complicit with this or if he's just completely ignorant of the fact that he's being duped again. Maybe he just gets really pumped and he's like, "We got to get this out immediately. This is amazing." And then like someone shows them the x-rays and they're like, "Look, these x-rays are real x-rays. They're showing real bones. Oh my God, we got to get this out there." Yeah. And then immediately goes to Congress. And then like next week, there's going to be some fucking punk kid being like, "Oh shit, I lied to you and you bought it, you son of a bitch."
Right, yeah. Well, I guess like everything else with the UFO stuff right now, we'll just have to wait and see how it goes. Supposedly the Peruvian face peelers aren't cartel members. There's still reports of weird shit happening there, but I don't know. I'll try to get.
Maybe that's what the cartel members want you to think.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows? We don't know. But we'll keep an eye on that and keep you guys posted as well. I want to live in a world where there's face rippers.
I don't want to live in that world. That sounds like a terrifying world. I hate that world. I want to punch that world in the face.
So now that that's out of the way, what do we got on the docket for tonight, sir?
Now that we got business out of the way, let's get down to fucking ridiculousness. So, I don't recall if we've talked about it before. I feel like we may have, but you don't have a recollection of it. And usually you remember when I don't. So I'm thinking if you don't remember it, we haven't. But recently I've been, not that there's been recent sightings or anything, but I've been just kind of coming across these things about the, I think it's pronounced the Ningen,Ningen, which is, it's this creature that's supposed to live like off the coast of Antarctica. It was first sighted by a Japanese whale research vessel in the early 2000s. But it kind of has the feel of like creepypasta, because this whole thing, it started as a thread on 2chan. So this is before it was 4chan, I guess. I don't know. But the poster claimed to be an employee of the Japanese government who was on a whale research vessel, and he encountered this giant, what they initially thought was a submarine, but as it got closer, it started to display characteristics of something that was alive, and apparently it was this huge, vaguely humanoid-shaped creature, all white with kind of a featureless face. It has eyes, but they're kind of just like blank eyes and like a straight slit of a mouth, but it's really wide. And it's got elongated limbs that could, depending on the witnesses, some claim that it's arms and legs with fingers and toes. Some claim that they're these long, like flippers or fins, and there's others that claim that they're tentacles. But this thing, there's tons of pictures out there of varying quality. Some of them are very obviously fakes. Some of them, not so much. There's also a couple videos as well of alleged sightings. But the thread that was originally posted to 2chan started to gain popularity, and then it was picked up by this Japanese magazine, MU, and they had an article on it in 2007. But with that article, that started to increase the popularity of this creature within Japan specifically. But apparently, once this came out, inside the article, there was a picture that was supposedly taken from Google Maps. Someone found this creature on Google Maps, and they posted it. But there have been tons of videos and pictures that have been posted, but most of it, there's not much that predates this initial post, which is kind of, we've done a few episodes now about different creepypastas, and that seems to kind of be the smoking gun, if you will, when it comes to whether or not this is something that's real or if it was something created for a cool internet story. And then with a lot of these things, like we've seen it with Slender Man and the Rake, how you start getting these pictures showing up of these beings, and it was all just a creepypasta, you know. But there's a lot of people that claim to have seen this, and there's also a conspiracy that there's a cover-up in effect of this creature. One of the popular theories is that the Japanese government is aware of this thing, but they're actively covering it up. And the reason is that the Ninjin is capable of producing this rare chemical compound that has medicinal properties, and they want to use this compound to make medicine. But there's others that speculate that rather than being medicinal properties, this chemical compound could be highly venomous, and it's intended to be used. They're intending to weaponize the creature.
I gotta say, they're getting really creative with their story writing these days. I've seen the images of this thing for years, and I remember looking into it right away, and I thought this was creepypasta. I didn't know that there was more than one sighting. I didn't know that there was video, supposedly. I've seen the photos, and they're clearly photoshopped. They're creepy. It's basically a huge white whale. It's got like the lower half of a whale, but the upper half is a human torso with arms with a featureless face. I just sent you a link in the chat, Mike. This is the only thing that I've seen similar, especially in Japanese folklore. We've covered the yokai a lot. I've studied them a lot. And this is the umibuzo. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. And it translates to sea monk. If you look up sea monk, you're going to see an old, like a European type of engraving drawing of something that's called a monk fish. But this is from Japanese demonology. Take a look at that thing. Mm-hmm. And maybe they're claiming to see this, but like I said, I thought this was creepypasta, and I came across something like, I forget what it's called. I'll put it in the show notes. Forgive me. It's called something like the Monument Monsters. It's like this long. There's been a lot of new SCP type things that have been made, and you can watch like a 5-hour video on all these. It's just basically an alternate reality where all the monuments in our country are actually the homes to a variety of bizarre creatures, and it's all very realistic sounding. Another thing I found is called the Gideon's Keys, and they have one for every country. I think they're making new ones, and it's just stories that our people write, but they write it to where if you go to this place, you'll get this. If you go to this place and do this, this will happen. But they're using real places, so they're kind of blending the line of creepypasta with reality. It's kind of this augmented reality they're making to where they're blending in real places. It kind of makes me think of Martin Aldsmith's books.
Nice. Yeah, I still haven't looked into that. You've been telling me about that, and I still haven't gotten to look into it yet.
It's just amazing to see the next step in like something like what the SCP Foundation is. Like the writing ability and the creativity that comes along with it. After you watch some of this stuff, I mean, it's almost hard to believe anything anymore. It's just another one of these things to where they do such a good job, and that if they don't declare that it's fake, you go, wait a minute, I have to research this. Is this real? Is this fake? And that's what I thought these ninja things were. But I don't know. The closest thing I've ever seen is this sea monk. Do you think those are similar at all?
Well, yeah, and there's a lot of yokai and things in Japanese folklore that are kind of similar. But there's actually another one from Japanese folklore that I think at the very least the name is derived from, and it's a creature called the Ningyu. So this one, the Ning, maybe it's pronounced Ningen,Ningen, and then the creature in folklore is Ningyu, Ningyo.
Okay, so we're seeing a link to some actual like historical stuff here. Okay, cool.
And the name Ningyo actually is a term that means human fish.
Ew.
And it's supposed to be a fish-like creature that's described as having a monkey's mouth. Inside the mouth are small fish-like teeth. It has golden scales and a quiet flute-like voice. According to the folklore, if you were to catch one and eat it, it would increase your lifespan. But if you were to catch it, you're also cursing the area with storms, and you yourself will experience misfortune.
But if you catch it and fuck it, I'm just kidding. I'll take that out. I'm sorry.
But if you catch it and fuck it,
it'll rain gold coins for 6 minutes.
Maybe. Or maybe you'll just shit gold bars.
Ooh, I'll take it.
Until you bleed to death.
Yeah, I go through that every day.
You shit gold bars? Good for you, man. Share the wealth. I'll take some of your shitty gold. It's liquid gold. Liquid gold. Gross. But this thing, it's a lot of people think that if any of these pictures are real, what it could be is a beluga whale. If you look at a beluga whale's face, that's kind of similar. They've got the almost featureless face and the big wide mouth. And it might just be like one of those things where it's like a trick of perception, or where you don't have anything to compare it to size-wise. So someone just takes a picture of it and they're like, look at this fucking thing. It was 100 feet long. And really it was like 10 feet. If real, I think that's the most likely scenario there. But I mean, you can clearly see both you and I have two separate things from Japanese folklore that kind of match what this thing is. And
very interesting.
So yeah, and when I was looking more into it, because like I said, I just kind of recently have been seeing. I think where it started was I was watching an older episode of Ancient Aliens, and they were talking about it. And
wow!
Like, oh, I forgot all about that thing. So I started looking into it, and I just started reading about it a little more, and that's how I came across the Ningyo. But it made me start thinking about other sea creatures or famous sea monsters in mythology, and how the legends have kind of evolved throughout time, and whether or not there's parallels in modern sightings. I think it's kind of weird. Like there's these beings in Buddhist and Hindu mythology that are guardians of, they're representatives of guardians of the threshold, and they're seen at a lot of Hindu and Buddhist temples in the artwork. But they are typically a combination of a sea creature and a sea creature and a land creature. And you kind of see that in like sighting reports of Champ. A lot of people say that it has a head like a horse. That's a frequent description of a lot of I shouldn't say a lot of lake monsters specifically, is that they've got a head like a horse, which seems weird, like when you think about it at first. But I think what they mean by that is just like a long head. But I just thought that was interesting, that's how these sea creatures were often depicted as just an amalgamation of a land animal with like a fish tail.
Mm-hmm.
or flippers, or
Yeah, you're right. There's quite a few. I mean, even Nessie was described as having a horse face, I think, at one point. That's
Yeah.
really, really common description of a lot of lake and sea monsters. And I think that
Right.
you're right. There's a lot of times to where they use what they got, the best example of what they've got where they're from to describe things. And a horse face, I mean, yeah, that's just a long extended snout, long extended face.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have a lot of monitor lizards running around where Nessie sightings are being seen or sea monster sightings, but
I would have to think not. I don't think there's monitor lizards in Scotland.
Yeah, exactly. But I was doing a lot of reading on pareidolia about when we were getting ready to do this stuff, because just like one of the things that stands out to me is how like some people try to explain away mermaids as sailors confusing mermaids with sea manatees and sea cows, and that to me it's just ridiculous. But
well, they say because manatees have their mammaries like up where the chest area would be, where most mammals have them lower, like around where their stomach would be. So they're thinking, well, these things have tits, so clearly the lonely sailors saw tits, and that's all they
right.
They're so dumb that they were hypnotized by manatee tits, and it became a mermaid.
Right, yeah, and like, sorry to be so crude, but in my notes here I have tits. They these in legend, these things are supposed to be beautiful, and they're supposed to hypnotize with their song, like the sirens and stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different types of different versions of that in various cultures too. Like there's Finn folk, there's the Selkies, there's mermaids, there's sirens, there's Aenids. I mean, there's fucking so many of them, but and they all kind of have the same thing where they use charm or a beautiful voice or something to lure these men into being eaten, basically.
Right. And how drunk would you have to be, Mike, to where you look into the ocean from the side of a ship in the 1600s and see a fucking sea cow and be like, I gotta fight trying to fuck that thing, man. I mean, honestly,
I gotta say, I don't think there's any amount of alcohol that would make me think in that manner.
Yeah, and I just don't buy that. These dudes see sea manatees and sea cows all the fucking time. They're not going to confuse it for what a mermaid's described as. So, I mean,
and especially manatees they don't exist in some of these places where those myths exist.
Right. So, I mean, horse face, to me, that always meant just elongated face, not, I mean, I know that there's some Irish and Scottish sea creatures like the water horse to where it is a horse.
Yep. Right. But that's different.
Yeah, they're not saying it has a horse's head, it has a horse-like head.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've always noticed that, even as a kid, it's like, what's this horse shit? What is this horse stuff?
Yeah, and that's even seen in descriptions of the Jersey Devil as well. Yeah. But the Jersey Devil is just one big amalgamation of fucking weird animals anyway, so in that case, maybe it is an actual horse head.
Yeah.
But it makes so we look at all these, like we were talking with the sirens and the mermaids and all the different takes on those throughout cultures, but you see that a lot in mythology and in folklore. It's to me, that's evidence that stories were shared across cultures and across time. And another example of this is the story of the Leviathan. A lot of people are familiar with the term Leviathan, but maybe not so much the origins of Leviathan. It's more than just the big bad in Hellraiser 2. It was a
That's my favorite one.
That one kicks so much ass. Love that one. The fucking labyrinth and everything. Oh fuck, so good. But that has nothing to do with this Leviathan, unfortunately. If only it did. but that Leviathan did not live in the ocean. But in the Bible, it's referenced in a bunch of different books of the Bible, especially from the Old Testament. It's in the book of Psalms, the book of Job, the book of Isaiah, the book of Amos, and it's also in some of the Apocrypha as well, like the book of Enoch. It later became known as kind of like the embodiment of chaos. And I think that kind of took on more of a characteristic as Christianity started to unfold. It was kind of lumped in with like the devil, and there's even been ties to say that it was one of the great beasts of Revelation, the one that came from the ocean with all the heads and the crowns. Like that has been linked to Leviathan.
Right.
And there's some Christian theologians that even say that Leviathan is a representation of the demon that represents envy. So, but part of the original story of Leviathan is that a lot of the original references to it was as basically being used to show God's glory and the fact that God created these amazing creatures. And originally there were two of them. There was a male and a female, just like all things that God created. And they were basically invincible. The story goes that God created the male and the female. They were the greatest creature, the largest creatures that were ever created. They could breathe fire. Their scales were impenetrable. And the only thing that would kill them would be God. And the story goes that God ended up killing the female because he feared that if they reproduced, that their offspring would destroy the world. So in order to save the world, he killed the female. And the fact that he killed the female is really significant because this follows a pattern of myths that are very similar. We see this myth with the Mesopotamian story of creation, the Enuma Elish, or Elish, which is the Babylonian creation epic. And in this book, we have Tiamat, who is she's depicted as being the goddess of the sea, and she's usually shown as being this huge serpent or dragon. And she had a husband named Absu, who was the god of groundwater. And so you've got the goddess of the sea and the god of groundwater. So I assume by groundwater, that's like fresh water, the aquifers, springs, things like that. So they produced children, which was the first generation of Babylonian gods. And Absu found out that their children were planning to kill him and take over his throne. And as a result, he decided to wage war against them, and his children killed him. So upon finding out that their children killed her husband, Tiamat gets pissed off, and she declares war on the children that killed her husband. And as a result, she produces this multitude of offspring that are basically all the monsters of the world. Like any monsters that were in Babylonian mythology were birthed by Tiamat at this point so that she could go to war with the gods. Eventually, she's killed by the storm god named Marduk. And once he kills her, he splits her body, and from her body, he creates the heavens and the earth. But from her blood came all mortal life, including all of the monsters in the Mesopotamian legends. including the first dragons to show up on Earth. So she is also the mother of dragons, which is probably why in Dungeons and Dragons, Tiamat is a dragon who has the heads of all the chromatic dragons, which are the evil dragons in Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm sure that's based off of that fact that she's also the mother of dragons. But that myth gave way to another myth of a being called Lotan. And Lotan is a Syrian myth that has been traced back to somewhere between the 18th and 16th century BC. And in this story, you again have the giant snake monster thing called Lotan, who is the servant of the sea god in this case, rather than being the actual sea god. The sea god's name is Yam, not to be confused with a vegetable. And Lotan is Yam's servant, who is then defeated by the storm god Hadad Baal. And so again, you've got the god hero killing the sea monster. And so this goes back to the story of Leviathan, who was killed by Yahweh, who's the God of the Old Testament. And there's even evidence to suggest that the original, the way that Isaiah, specifically the verse 27, chapter 1, is said to be a direct quote taken from the original story of Lotan. And in that, it's basically talking about how the snake is a wriggling serpent, and they describe it, and it's almost I mean, it really depends on which translation of the Bible you're reading, because every translation kind of words it differently. But when you look at the base of it, it's all very, very similar. But there's, in the story of Lotan, there's even a reference to this monster as being the mighty one with 7 heads, which is the beast of Revelation. So you've got the tie back there.
Yeah.
But this whole thing kind of, it's repeated. So right now we just went over the Hebrew myth, the Babylonian myth, the Syrian myth, but it's also in Greek mythology with Zeus killing Typhon, also seen in Norse mythology with Thor fighting Jormungandr, and even in the Vedas of Hindu mythology, you've got the story of Indra fighting Vritra, who was a human-like serpent that stood in his way, and Indra had to fight him and kill him because he was hoarding the waters and the rains from the people. But in a lot of these stories, this being takes on, it doesn't typically start as a monster or a demon, but it gets, as the story goes on and as time goes on, they kind of take on the appearance of the villain or the monster, and the slayer is usually depicted as the hero. But I think that in this case, it's water is a lot of times in creation myth, it's used kind of to show like as a representation of the creative force of nature. So I think that's why a lot of these myths have this giant serpent thing being associated with the water or with the ocean, and why in a lot of cases after being killed, it allows creation to continue or to be completed, or in some cases prevents the destruction of creation. So it's to me, I love seeing this stuff like that, where you just see it spread throughout, all over the world, very different places, but we're seeing very similar stories. Just the hero and the monster are given different names, slightly different roles in some cases. But the story is similar enough that it shows that there's some connection there. And whether that how cool would it be if the connection was that somewhere down the line, this was a real story and there was like this superpowered being that fought some unbeatable serpent monster in the ocean. And, and it was at the beginning of time, and that's what allowed creation to go forth from that point. I think it's probably more likely that at the time it was known that these were, being used for as symbols or as allegories for creation and destruction. But now when we look at it, we see the similarities, and who knows, maybe it is a situation where the ancient world was a lot smaller than we give it credit for, and that cultures were sharing ideas and mythology and legends and stories.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we're seeing all these things that are so similar, because you look at the cultures, and not only are the cultures different geographically, but also in time. They exist in different time periods, and we're still seeing these repeating. So I love the stuff like this, but I also love the stuff that was a myth or a legend that was I shouldn't say definitively, but very likely based on something real, like the Kraken, for instance. And how wild is this, by the way? Like within our lifetime, the giant squid has went from being a myth that we knew, basically I shouldn't say myth because we had the bodies wash up, but during our lifetime, we had never had footage of a living giant squid. And now we've got video of them fucking swimming and shit. There's actual photos of them in the wild now. And to think all those centuries ago, the idea of the Kraken was, unless you were a sailor or somebody who believed in sailor stories, it was relegated to myth. And for those that don't know, I'm sure everybody has heard of the Kraken now. A lot of people associate it with Greek mythology just because of Clash of the Titans. But the Kraken was actually originally a monster that attacked sailors off the coast of Norway. So nothing to do with Greece. This was a fucking Viking monster. And it was, depending on who was describing it, it was described differently. The most common depiction is the giant squid, which is why a lot of people, now that we know the giant squid is a real thing, why that's attributed mostly to the Kraken myth. Apparently the Kraken had this tactic it would use, and it wasn't like a bloodthirsty monster. It would just attack for no reason. It was typically if it was interrupted while it was feeding, or if you were trying to steal its food source, it would attack. But what it would do, it would cough up this stuff that would attract fish. And it was theorized that what it would cough up would be like the remaining bits in its stomach from its previous meal. And so it would use the chunks of its previous meal to lure in its new meal. And it would bring a bunch of fish into the area, and then it would kind of reach up and swallow all the fish without chewing, just reach up and swallow them. But like I said, if you fuck with it while it's eating, or you try to steal the fish that gathered as a result of this lure, then it will destroy the ship and eat the sailors instead of the fish. And it was said that the Kraken would be able to create a whirlpool, and it would use the whirlpool to kind of suck the ship down, and then it would reach up with these tentacles to capsize the ship and then snack on the people that came out. But there were other depictions of this, and one of we did an episode on map monsters, and I think we discussed the different appearances of the Kraken in that episode. But there were these appearances of the Kraken that was like these weird, like they had legs, but they were also depicted like having a blowhole like a whale and huge mouths that they would use to create. One of the legends was that by opening its mouth underwater, that's what created the whirlpool, and the whirlpool kind of pulled the ship down towards its mouth, and then it would shoot its tentacles out to grab and help pull down into its mouth.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's fucking terrifying, right? But we know now that these myths were likely based on the giant squid, and whether or not the giant squid was more aggressive back then, who knows? It could have just been the simple fact that they saw a fucking 30-foot squid and were like, holy fuck, that thing is terrifying. Don't want to fuck with that. So in order to not fuck with it, they had the stories that if you leave it alone, it's not going to tip your ship over and eat you. But if you fuck with it, it's going to pull you down and eat you and you're dead.
That leaves me with a few questions for you. I don't know if it was the Odyssey to where they had to take this one path that would lead them by the Kraken and another path would lead them next to the whirlpool, and they had to pick basically how many men they wanted to lose.
Oh, I think that was the Odyssey. Wait.
Something tells me that I'm wrong.
No,
it tells me Hercules.
Was it? No, you're thinking I'm pretty sure it was the Odyssey. I always mix up the two.
Right. Yeah.
The Iliad and the Odyssey. It's one of the two. But you're thinking. So they had to go by the pillars of Heracles. That's what you're thinking. And on one side there was the sea monster, and on the other side was the whirlpool. I don't remember the sea monster's name though.
I always found that interesting because to me, I remember it being called the Kraken, and it was a definite separation of a whirlpool and the Kraken, because a lot of people said that the Kraken was just a whirlpool, and I always laughed at how that pointed out. No, those were two separate things. But now that we know that there's colossal squid, giant squid, I mean, sure, maybe they're a little bit bigger back then, but are these things big enough to be taking down ships? I mean, do you think that that's what they were seeing? Because according to hundreds of years of stories, I don't think that's possible.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible that it's going to be taking down, a full-size ship. Certainly not. The giant squids typically grow to, I think, a regular, like they're typically between like 30 feet, but I believe that they're the feeder tentacles, the ones that extend out and grab, can get up to 60 feet long. But that's just the two grabby tentacles.
Mm-hmm.
And then with giant, so there is a difference between giant squid and colossal squid. It's not just like saying, oh, that one was colossal, that one. No, the difference is, and this is fucking terrifying, the giant squid, or on its feeding tentacles, has suction cups with teeth on it. So when the teeth will dig in to help hold on to its prey item. Whereas the colossal squid has fucking hooks in addition to the suction cups.
Holy
so it'll dig
shit.
its fucking literal hooks into you and pull you in towards its giant fucking parrot beak and rip the shit out of you.
Oh my God. Hook beak.
It's terrifying, man.
See, I don't know. That sounds like that could be something that these guys were running into, if one was big enough.
Yeah, and like I said, it's also, you need to factor in that you're seeing something underwater. So when you're looking from above underwater, you can't get a completely accurate reading on how big something would be. Also, you are getting the recall from the sailors after the fact, once they get back to land, after they've had time to sit on it. And the human mind is prone to exaggeration. If you see something that's because I mean, let's be real. You see a fucking 30-foot squid, that's ungodly huge. That's fucking terrifying. And by the time you get back, like, that was the entire length of your ship. You come back, you're telling all your buddies, we saw the fucking Kraken. It was as long as our ship. We're lucky to have survived. It could have tipped us over.
Right. Do you think that's the start of it? Because I was kind of just thinking about this and talking with my wife about it. We've gone through so many stories to where it's just part of the culture to lie and make up stories. That most cultures will create some type of spooky story to keep children in line and control them better. I don't see sailors doing that with the ocean. Like, don't go over there because there's a big monster and it'll get you. To me, that just seems weird. Do you think it's just more of them running into something like that, and then the next person saying it was 10 feet bigger and it hit their boat, and the next guy telling the story it was 5 feet bigger and it attacked the boat, and the next guy's story was it was 70 feet and it killed 3 guys?
Yeah, I could definitely see it being like a Creatures of the Lumberwoods sort of situation, or like a game of telephone where it's like one guy told his buddy that he saw a 20-foot squid, and another guy's like, my friend just saw a 50-foot squid. And then the people that he told was like, I know this guy who's got a friend who's a sailor, and he saw a 100-foot monster out there, and it almost capsized their ship. And then so on and so forth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I think so.
Yeah, but I think we can rest assured what these stories of the Kraken, what that was not a colossal squid. I mean, it's not a colossal squid's not taking down a dinghy, I don't think. Maybe some type of rowboat, sure, maybe, but maybe they were dealing with something else, a different type of monster.
Who knows? Maybe there's something that's scarier than a giant squid out there. Maybe there is a giant humanoid fish man. Yeah. Maybe there are fucking creatures that sing us into the water and then eat us. Who's to say? Maybe the world really is. Maybe we do live in the fucking SCP Foundation world, and these are all SCPs. Maybe that Mariana Trench recording was actually based on reality.
We can only pray.
I'll pray on it all day. Let's fucking go. Let's flood the world and start over.
Yeah, we're due. I mean, even the aliens are tired of us. They're showing up now.
It's been a while since we've had a really apocalyptic flood, I've been waiting. I feel like I've been patient. Let's fucking go. Give me this flood and bring the monsters.
Put the flood in my mouth.
Gross.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.